Okay, so today we are going to start to talk about the greats, okay? Like I said, what we're doing here is I want to be able to teach you guys what they are, maybe give you a little bit more of an in-depth or look at them, because all of these things in terms of the greats, basically we are going to use them throughout the year as we talk about the civilizations that we're going to discuss throughout the school year. And they're just going to kind of play a very large role within what we're going to talk about this school year. So, the greats, and I want you guys to you guys have already jotted down some of this information, so make sure that you guys are working with me to help answer some of the questions here and everything else like that. So, G obviously stands for government. What was the definition that we got for government that you guys found online? Anybody guess?
A form or system of rule in which a state, community, etc. is governed.
It's the form of rule in which a state or a community is governed. Probably when we talk about all of these things in terms of how they affect the civilization, government is probably the number one important thing as it relates to the greats. Because without government, do we have a society? Okay. Who said yes? Anybody? Nobody? Okay. Thought I heard somebody say yes. But without government, we don't have a society because there's no one there to do what? What does government do for us? What's that?
Govern us.
But what I mean, yeah, they govern us, but what do they do specifically? Yes. Okay. Anybody? Yes. Lead.
Or they kind of control everything to make it all go right, and like for the economy, the government kind of helps. It makes everything stable.
You're on the right track. They're very good. Yes.
They set rules and laws.
Set rules and laws. Okay, that's probably one of the biggest things when we look at government that many of you guys think of is rules and laws. But yes, they do other things too. They oversee our economy and everything else like that. I use the example of the fact that in this classroom, who's the leader of this classroom?
You.
Me, okay? I often joke around and say that this classroom's a dictatorship and all my rules are what goes and everything else is, this, that, and everything. But in terms of this classroom, I'm the leader of this classroom. So say this classroom is its own like little city and everything else like that, and I decide, you know what, hey guys, I'm gonna leave this classroom for 4 hours and I'll be back. I walk out that door, I shut the door. What's going to happen in here?
It's going to go crazy.
Chaos, anarchy, it's going to go crazy. I guarantee you at the very minimum, if I walk in, you guys will be talking very, very loudly, if not worse. Okay? And government is there to kind of keep that stuff under control for the people, and without that, we start to see some chaos happen. There's a reason why in most of these societies that the first type of job that was developed after farming was a leader, and that was because they needed some stability. And that's what government kind of gives them, okay? The next one. Religion. What is religion? Yes?
A set of beliefs that usually involve rituals.
A set of beliefs that usually involve rituals. Every society has some form of religion, okay? You guys talked about religion when you discussed Greece and Rome last year, correct?
Yeah.
What did you guys talk about with that?
Well, I remember like when we did the civilization, like the Aztecs and stuff. I know
Okay.
that they would like sacrifice people for their gods.
But they're plural. You used the word gods, right? Was it the same way with the Greeks and the Romans? Did they have a god or gods?
Yeah.
And what did these gods do?
Basically everything.
Basically everything. But no, I mean, in terms of like, what was their specific like roles in their lives? What did they represent?
Well, it was kind of like, it just never mind. Sorry, I was thinking of something else.
Okay.
They represented like a leader.
Okay. But didn't they like play like certain roles? Like, what was Zeus the god of? Lightning and thunder in the sky. What was Poseidon the god of?
Water.
Water. And I can go through a million other ones as well too. but they all represented something in the world, correct? And religion often does that. Even when we talk about what we're going to talk about this year with the Eastern world, they're going to have, in terms of the ancient world, they're going to have many gods and goddesses. Very similar to Greece and Rome, and even the Aztecs, where they have the sun gods and all the rest of that stuff. But religion, throughout history, has been used to explain things that you cannot explain. Correct? Now we know about storms and everything else like that because of what? And it's science. Okay? Even today, in some cases, religion is still used to explain things that you cannot explain. Correct? I use this example in my first 2 period classes. What happens when you die? You go to heaven?
It's your opinion. It's like your religion.
It's part of the beliefs, and like I said, and like I also pointed out to my other classes, I'm not here to change anybody's belief about anything. But my question for you is, those of you that sit there and talk about that and say, oh, I'm going to go to heaven when I die, can you tell me that with 100% certainty that's what's going to happen to you? Why? Why can't you tell me that?
It's not our decision.
But no, it's not even that decision part. But why couldn't you tell me with 100% certainty? Yes?
Because, like, who knows? I mean, no one can scientifically prove that, or you don't know if they ever go.
Exactly, and none of us in here have died and come back. I mean, I know zombies are the big thing right now, but, you know, none of us have died and come back to tell us, hey, you know what, there's a heaven, it's great, it's awesome. They got popcorn and chips and fountains full of chocolate and everything else like that. You know, I mean, it's one of those things that the beliefs of people drive that in a certain direction, okay? And we're going to study religions this year, and I want to point this out. When we talk about religions in this class, and I'll re-emphasize this later as well too, we're talking about it from a historical point of view. I know, probably I could say right now, about 95 to 100% of you in this class follow some form of the Christian faith. Correct? Okay. I don't need to know yes or no for sure that you do or not. But there's a guy in that religion. His name is Jesus. And in that religious beliefs, they believe that he is the Son of God. Okay? But in our class, for our point of view, for what we're teaching, yes, we'll talk a little bit about that belief, but we're going to focus on Jesus, the man who created a religion. Okay? Like I said, I am not trying to sway anybody's beliefs in here at all. But the thing that we have to understand is that we will focus in on other religions because Christianity is not the majority religion in the Eastern world. Does anybody know what the big majority religion in the Eastern world is?
Is it Muslim?
Islam. The Muslims follow Islam. Muslims are the follow. We'll get into more details about that later. So for our purposes for this class, for me to teach you about Christianity, only about Christianity, does a disservice to the Eastern world, which is what we're talking about. We're going to talk about Buddhism. We're going to talk about Hinduism. We're going to talk about Judaism. We're going to talk about Christianity. And we're going to talk about Islam. Because they all were founded in the Eastern world. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam were all founded basically in the same area. In the Middle East. So, but like I said, that's one of those things that we're going to talk about this year. We're going to go into detail about that this year. And like I said, I want you guys to have a better idea because it is another one of those central beliefs in what we're talking about for the world. Economics. All right, who's going to give me the nice, fancy, long definition that you guys found online that none of you understand what you're talking about?
I have a normal definition.
Good.
The science that deals with the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services for the material welfare of humankind.
Okay, that was awesome. Just what I was looking for in terms of that kind of stuff. Do you understand any word that came out of your mouth with that?
Some of them, but not all of them.
Okay, very good. And that's what the point I'm trying to get across is that there is a long list of economic theories, supply, demand, you know, the the average value of goods and services, and all of the rest of that stuff. For this class, because I really don't want to get into a whole lot, I mean, we will talk about economics. We will talk about things that involve economics. But we're not going to get into it on that level right there. Okay? Economics is important because it is what drives a society, what runs a society in the long run. Okay? And there are two main things that we're really going to focus in on as it relates to economics. The first of which, I bet you guys can guess what the first one is. Because the word economics, it's central to it.
Economy.
Not economy, but no. What is central to making our economics work? Money! We don't have money, we don't have economics. Well, I guess I can take that back. We should still be trading and everything else like that, but that's a whole other story. But money and wealth and power, okay? We're going to talk a lot about that this year. How the Europeans became wealthy off the backs of the Africans, and Africans during the age of imperialism. So we're going to talk a lot about that. But probably the biggest concept that we're going to talk about as it relates to economics and this class, and you guys may have covered it a little bit last year, is standard of living. Okay? Does anybody know what standard of living is? Tommy?
Maybe like how a standard person lives.
You're on the right track with that, what you said there. It's how a person lives. Not necessarily a standard person, but how a person lives. If you have a high standard of living, you expect a lot from your life. I mean, you watch all those reality TV shows on E! Or MTV or whatever else like that, that show the rich kids and all their parties and everything else like that. You know, they have a high standard of living, obviously. Okay? And in this year, in this class, we're going to talk about places in Africa and stuff like that that have a very low standard of living. It's how you live your life. I asked my kids in my other class, how many of you got a new pair of shoes before school started this year? How many of you that have your hands raised get a new pair of shoes before every school year starts? It's kind of an expectation by yourself, am I correct? Yeah? Mom and Dad walked in and said, you know what, you can wear your shoes from last year. What would the reaction be by some of you? What? Not a chance. I gotta get the new Jordans. Or even better, my favorite one too. Here, how many of you got new clothes for school this year? How many of you guys get new clothes virtually every year for school? Okay. So with that said, if Mom and Dad walked in and said, hey, you know what, you gotta wear your clothes from last year. Oh, I can already see you guys are laughing and chuckling about it and everything else like that. It happens. There's an expectation, even my kids have it. You know, they're going to school, they're getting new clothes, we're ready to start the school year, okay? And it's just part of the whole process there. And that's because it's become an expectation. That's your standard of living. If you are living in Africa or in a third world country or even some of the poor parts of the United States or wherever else like that, it may not be an expectation. Just walking to school might be good enough for you to get there. And we're going to talk a lot about that, and we're going to focus in on a lot about that, especially as it relates to places like Africa that at one point in time had a very high standard of living, and then after history affected it in terms of the Europeans and stuff like that, they had a very low standard of living. So with that said, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about with economics this year. The arts. The arts. What do you think about the arts? What would be a good one for the arts?
I said it's human creativity, skill, or imagination that they apply to things they do.
Yeah, that's a great definition of it. And I even kind of take it a step further than that. It's what we leave behind that makes an impact on society. I mean, we don't remember the Egyptians for their daily life, do we? But we got these big old pyramids standing in the middle of a desert that they built out of the ground that we're still trying to figure out how, in some cases, how they built those things that just make us want to learn more and more about them. The mummies from ancient Egypt. or even in some cases when you talk about China, the Forbidden City, the Great Wall of China, the things that are kind of like artifacts from the world, the stories that come along with it. You guys probably talked about some of the mythology in terms of the Greeks and everything else like that. A lot of the stories that came about as a result of that as well too. So I mean, there's a lot of things that people leave behind that are very creative that have an impact on our society as a whole. Okay? We're going to talk about those things. Hammurabi, one of the great leaders of Mesopotamia, was very famous for a law code, a set of law codes that he had written down. Nobody had thought about that before. I consider that as part of the arts because he wrote those things down. He created those things, okay? You know, and it's just one of those things that, you know, it's how we remember these things, and it's kind of like I said, it's one of those things that it's just people being creative and making an impact on society. Okay? You guys got that? It's pretty cut and dry with that one. It's pretty simple with that one. All right. Technology. I know the first thing that pops in our head about technology is what? What's that?
The thing in front of me.
The thing in front of you, your new iPads. Or, hey, I gotta get the new PlayStation 4, the new Xbox One. The new iPhone 6 is coming out in September. You know, all those things that kind of run through your head right now about what we have today. And that's true. Because you guys don't see a lot of that stuff that the ancient world did. But what if I told you that probably one of the most important advancements in our world in technology was farming?
Yeah.
Would you think farming is an advancement in technology?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Or the invention of the plow. Or the invention of writing. Or paper. Or ink. Or the printing press. All that stuff that you guys are so used to and probably don't see it sometimes as an advancement in technology, at one time in history, it was. And without it, we wouldn't be where we are today. Okay? So, yes, we talk a lot about technology in this classroom. We're going to focus in on a lot of technology, especially with the ancient world. In fact, it is right here with our essential question. Innovations and technology are virtually one and the same. But it's one of those things that by advancing those things, we advance our society and we're creating a larger, more active civilization. The last one is social structure. Every society has a social structure. Even as far down in terms of social structure, even like in our school building. Even with you guys as kids, you have your own social structure, correct?
Yeah.
There's group levels in there. You're friends with certain people, okay? There's group levels in terms of this building, in terms of Mr. Rich, the principal. He's the top of the social structure here in terms of principals, teachers, students, so on and so forth. I mean, custodians, all the rest of that stuff. I mean, they all line up in a certain ranking within that social structure that we talk about. And it kind of gives levels to society. And we're going to talk a lot about that as we get into the ancient world and how they're kind of structured and how they kind of look from there. So, I mean, there's always some form of a social structure within a society, okay? Are there questions about this stuff? Did I make it a little bit more clear for you guys? Rather than some